My girlfriend has a secret second phone, and my head was spinning from overthinking who she really is. And after this, I started doubting in her. Okay, so here's the thing. I, 27M, have been with my girlfriend, 25F, for 2 years now. And for the most part, things felt solid. We met again after knowing each other in our teens, and somehow it just clicked the second time around. I honestly thought I'd never meet someone like her, someone who seemed so grounded, so sure of herself, and who carried that rare combination of independence and warmth. I mean, I knew she had high standards for choosing a partner, and the fact she chose me made me feel like I'd hit the jackpot. For the first year, everything felt effortless. We laughed, argued playfully, and shared little routines that felt almost sacred, like Sunday mornings with terrible coffee but good conversation, or the quiet moments watching the sunset from her balcony. I used to think I'd never be the kind of guy to actually love someone like this. Seriously, someone who could read me in seconds and make me feel like I'm home no matter what. But somewhere in the back of my head, there was always this tiny voice of doubt. Not about her, but about me. I worried I wasn't enough, or that my insecurities might somehow push her away. And honestly, I've seen enough relationships fail that I knew trust was fragile. No matter how perfect everything looks, that I've never really been the type to overthink things. But sometimes I catch myself staring at her for minutes, just trying to memorize the way she tilts her head when she's genuinely amused, or how she bites her lip when she's nervous. And yeah, I guess I just felt lucky. Lucky to have someone like her, and a little terrified that all of it could unravel if I made a single mistake. All right. So after about a year into our relationship, I started noticing tiny things, little quirks in her behavior that didn't make sense to me at first. Nothing huge, nothing, oh my God, she's hiding a secret, obvious, but just enough to make me pause. She'd sometimes disappear for a few hours, saying she was running errands or catching up with friends, but the tone in her voice sounded off, like she was rehearsing her own lie. I tried not to overthink it, because I trust her, but the gnawing feeling in my stomach wouldn't let me ignore it. One night, she came home after one of these mysterious outings, and I noticed she was wearing a hoodie I didn't recognize. One that smelled faintly of another person. I caught a glimpse of her eyes in the dim hallway light, and there was a flicker of something, almost defensive, though I couldn't be sure. My brain immediately started spinning. Why is she wearing someone else's hoodie? Did she pick it up from a friend's place? Or is there more to this than I'm seeing? We sat down on the couch, me trying to sound casual, her acting her usual calm self. Where's this hoodie from? I asked, keeping my tone light. Oh, just a thrift shop I went to today, she said, voice a little too smooth, like it had been practiced. And I nodded, trying to swallow the unease curling in my chest. She smiled at me, that warm smile that usually melts everything in its path, but that night it felt like a mask. I couldn't shake the sense that she was hiding something, and my gut kept screaming that this wasn't just about a hoodie. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing other small things too. Messages on her phone that she'd quickly put away, calls she'd step out for, and the way her laughter sometimes felt slightly forced when talking about her friends. I tried giving her the benefit of the doubt, telling myself maybe I was just being paranoid. But then, one Sunday morning, I accidentally saw a snippet of a text she had left open on the kitchen counter. It wasn't explicit, nothing direct, but enough to make my heart sink. I can't tell him, but he doesn't need to know everything. It's just easier this way. I froze. My stomach turned cold, and I felt like the floor beneath me had just dropped. She walked in, humming softly, completely unaware of my glance at her phone. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but I hesitated. My mind raced. Am I overreacting? Is this just some harmless secret? Or is this the beginning of something I won't be able to undo? I spent that day watching her, noticing everything. The way she touched her hair, the slight hesitation in her movements, the faint crease in her forehead when she thought I wasn't looking. I couldn't stop analyzing every little detail, trying to reconcile the woman I loved with these small, gnawing doubts. And the worst part? I could feel myself starting to obsess, starting to spiral into questions that had no answers yet. Questions like, does she still trust me fully? Does she even love me the way I thought she did? That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling for hours, wrestling with my own insecurities, the hoodie incident, and the vague sense that she might be living a small, hidden life alongside ours. My mind was a storm of suspicion, doubt, and that aching hope that I was just reading too much into things. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just paranoia. Something was off. Something was brewing that I wasn't ready to face yet. The next few weeks were a blur of unease and tiny, nagging suspicions. Every time she left the apartment for a quick errand or meeting a friend, I found myself checking the faint scent of perfume she wore, the way her bag was positioned on the couch, even the timing of her text messages. It felt obsessive, I knew that, but I couldn't stop. Something in me screamed that I had to notice every little thing, as if some detail might reveal the truth. Point one evening, she came home looking unusually tired. Her hair was slightly disheveled, and there was a faint smudge on the sleeve of her jacket. Long day at work? I asked casually, trying to sound nonchalant. Yeah, just, errands and some errands with friends, she said, forcing a smile. Her voice was clipped, the kind of tone that immediately puts you on alert without even realizing it. I tried to focus on normal conversation, but my mind was elsewhere. I started replaying every past interaction, searching for signs I had ignored before. The hoodie incident flashed vividly in my mind again. How it smelled faintly of someone else, how her eyes had darted away when I'd noticed it. Later that week, I noticed something else. She left her laptop unattended on the kitchen table. Curiosity, irrational as it was, got the better of me. I glanced at the screen, just a peek, and my heart sank. There were messages from someone I didn't recognize, the tone casual yet intimate. Not physical, but emotional. Words that conveyed trust, secrets shared, little moments she wasn't sharing with me. I immediately looked away, guilt pricking at me, but I couldn't stop thinking about it that I spent that night tossing and turning, imagining scenarios worse than any reality. What if this emotional connection had been growing for months right under my nose? What if she was hiding an entire part of her life from me, a part one could never access? My mind spun with what-ifs and hypothetical betrayals, each one sharper and more painful than the last. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I greeted her with a smile, pretended the previous night hadn't been a mental spiral, but I couldn't ignore the tension building between us. I noticed the subtle distance in her gestures, the way she kept a slight gap on the couch, the absence of that usual warmth when our hands brushed. It was like walking on fragile glass. Any wrong move might shatter the illusion of safety I'd held onto for so long that I realized then that I was trapped in my own head. I loved her deeply, truly, but these little signs, her secret texts, the hoodie, the sudden tiredness, were gnawing at my trust, creating a wedge I didn't know how to remove. And the worst part? I couldn't confront her directly. Asking about the messages or the hoodie might push her away, might make her defensive, or worse, confirm my fears. So I stayed silent, observing, overthinking, and slowly letting the tension consume our relationship. It felt like a slow-motion train wreck. Every day added more weight, more questions, more silent dread. And I couldn't tell if I was preparing for a breakup or if this pressure would eventually make me crack first. The tension between us started seeping into the smallest things. It wasn't massive arguments, just subtle moments that made my chest tighten every time. For instance, she'd mentioned going out with friends, and I'd noticed the hesitation in her eyes, that brief pause before she spoke, like she was measuring how much to reveal. I tried telling myself it was paranoia, that I was imagining it all, but my gut never lied. Point one evening, we were cooking dinner together, a task that usually made us laugh and joke. She hummed softly, chopping vegetables with precision, and I tried to join in the conversation about her day. Did you have a good time at? I started, then caught myself, realizing I didn't even know the details anymore. She looked up, smiling, but it was a small, controlled smile, not the spontaneous one that made my heart skip. It was fine, she said lightly, waving her hand, as if to dismiss the topic. I felt a flicker of frustration, but held it back. Inside, I was screaming, "Why won't you tell me? What are you hiding?" Later that night, I caught her phone buzzing again. Not out of malice. I didn't snoop, but curiosity got the better of me when she left it unattended. A notification popped up, a message preview from someone new, casual and teasing, something intimate in tone. My chest tightened, stomach dropped. It wasn't explicit, but it was enough to send my mind racing. I felt betrayed. Even if nothing physical had happened, I confronted her gently, trying to mask the fear in my voice. Hey, I noticed you've been texting someone a lot. Is everything okay? She looked startled, her brows knitting. Together. Yeah, it's nothing, just friends, nothing serious. Her voice was calm, but the subtle avoidance, the way she turned slightly away from me, the fidgeting, spoke volumes. I wanted to push, to dig, but I didn't. I didn't want to scare her off, didn't want to admit how badly this was affecting me. That night, I lay awake, replaying every word, every gesture. The hoodie, the secret texts, the tiny hesitations, they all felt like cracks in the foundation I thought we'd built over 2 years. I realized that I loved her more than anything, but I also saw a growing shadow between us. A shadow that wasn't fully of her making, but partly mine too. My insecurities, my overthinking, my inability to confront her fully, and somewhere deep down, I knew the tension wasn't going to disappear on its own. It was simmering, waiting for a spark to ignite. I teed up by this point. I couldn't ignore it anymore. Every smile, every casual touch, every "I'm fine" felt like it carried hidden meaning. I started questioning myself constantly. Am I imagining this? Am I not enough? Is she slipping away from me without me even realizing it? It was exhausting. I felt trapped in my own head, a maze of suspicion and love that refused to untangle. Point one. Night. She left her laptop open again, carelessly, or maybe deliberately. I stared at it for a few seconds before fighting the urge to look. But curiosity gnawed at me like a persistent ache. I saw a chat window with someone I didn't recognize. Their tone was playful, intimate, laughing emojis scattered throughout, and one line caught my eye. "You always know how to make me feel alive." I froze, not because she was cheating physically, but because this emotional closeness felt like a betrayal. I felt a pang of jealousy, guilt, and fear all at once. I thought about confronting her, about asking the questions that might destroy us, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Part of me knew it would hurt her, and part of me feared the answer. That weekend, we went for a quiet walk through the park. The air was crisp, the leaves crunching under our feet, but I couldn't enjoy a single moment. I kept stealing glances at her, watching how she laughed at a stranger's dog, how her fingers brushed against mine. Careful, polite, but not the spontaneous touch I used to feel that I wanted to ask, wanted to demand honesty, but instead I said nothing. I let the silence grow, letting my mind fill in the gaps with worst-case scenarios. And with each imagined betrayal, I felt a piece of our connection fracture. Later, at dinner, she casually mentioned plans with friends I didn't know. My heart sank, a knot tightening in my stomach. I smiled, nodded, but inside I was spiraling. The thought kept gnawing at me. She's keeping parts of her life separate. How much of her love is real for me if she's holding back like this? That night, lying in bed, I felt the weight of every hidden message, every secret moment she hadn't shared. I loved her. I truly did. But love alone wasn't enough anymore. I could feel the cracks in trust widening, the shadows of doubt growing heavier. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I feared that this silent, emotional distance could be irreversible if I didn't act. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to confront it fully, terrified of what I might find. At IT started with small inconsistencies. She'd say she was going out with friends, but sometimes I caught little slips, references to places I'd never heard of, inside jokes I didn't understand. At first, I brushed them off, convincing myself I was being paranoid. But deep down, I couldn't ignore the feeling that she was hiding something. Point one evening, I noticed her phone buzz incessantly while she was in the shower. I told myself to leave it alone, but the temptation was unbearable. A glance at the screen revealed a series of messages from someone she'd never mentioned. They weren't sexual, not in the traditional sense, but deeply personal, emotional. Exchanges that felt intimate in a way I hadn't experienced with her. She laughed in texts, shared frustrations, secrets, little joys. My chest tightened. This was a connection she was sharing with someone else, a side of herself she wasn't sharing with me. Later that night, I tried to act normal, laughing at her jokes and commenting on trivial things around the apartment. Inside, my mind was spinning. How long has this been going on? Why didn't she tell me? The emotional betrayal gnawed at me more than any physical act could have. I loved her, yes, but trust was fracturing. I began noticing her subtle behaviors. Even more, checking her phone when I wasn't around, smiling at messages, and then quickly hiding it, or stepping out of the room for private calls. Each time, my heart sank a little more. I knew I couldn't confront her directly without risking everything. Yet staying silent felt like slowly suffocating. One evening, I decided to follow her, just to see what she was doing. Not stalking in a malicious sense, but trying to understand, to piece together the truth. She went to a cafe I'd never been to, met someone, laughed freely, leaned in close. I felt the weight of reality crushing me. This was the emotional intimacy I was being denied. I returned home, hollow, unable to speak, unable to think clearly. The apartment felt cold, even though she was just steps away. She came in, smiling, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. We sat together on the couch, but I couldn't feel her. I loved her deeply, but part of her heart was elsewhere, and I was painfully aware of it. I realized then that love alone wasn't enough to bridge the gap she had created with her secrecy. And I had to decide, confront her, risking everything, or continue in silent torment, pretending that nothing was wrong while the emotional distance grew wider by the day. A week later, the tension reached a breaking point. I couldn't keep pretending anymore. Sitting across from her at the kitchen table, I felt my hands clench involuntarily. "We need to talk," I said, voice low but trembling. She looked up, puzzled. "About what?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "About everything. The secrets, the messages, the things you've been hiding. I feel like part of you isn't here with me, and I can't ignore it anymore." Her face changed, briefly defensive, then hesitant, as if she were weighing how much to reveal. I, I don't know what you mean," she said, but her fingers fiddled with the edge of her mug, betraying her calm facade. "I've noticed things," I continued, my voice rising slightly. "The trips you don't tell me about, the calls, the laughter I can't reach. It's like there's a side of you I'll never see." She sighed, finally looking me directly in the eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt you. It's complicated. I thought I could handle it without upsetting us." Her words were an attempt at reassurance, but the damage was visible. I felt my trust teetering, my heart pounding. "It's not just complicated, it's breaking me. I love you, but I can't compete with the life you keep hidden." She reached for my hand, but I pulled back slightly. The room was heavy with unspoken truths. We sat in silence for a long moment, both aware that things had changed irreversibly. My mind raced with questions. Was this emotional closeness with someone else a pattern? Could I ever feel fully secure again? That night, I lay awake, replaying every detail, every smile, every slip. I realized that her actions, even without physical betrayal, had created a rift in our relationship, one that might never fully close unless we rebuilt from complete honesty. I didn't know if we could survive it, but the confrontation had, at least, pulled the shadows into the open. The next day, I couldn't stop thinking about last night. Her words echoed in my mind, and yet, the silence between us weighed heavier than any confession could. I finally decided to give her the space to explain herself fully. She sat across from me in the living room, soft light spilling through the blinds. "I want you to understand," she began, voice quiet but deliberate. "I never intended to hurt you. I didn't cheat, not physically, but I got caught up in something I shouldn't have, something I thought I could control." I nodded, forcing myself to listen, though every nerve in me screamed. "Emotional closeness," I murmured, "with someone else." "Yes," she admitted. "It started small, just conversations, sharing feelings, but I realized it wasn't fair to you, or to us, yet I couldn't stop myself immediately." She paused, tears welling in her eyes. "I know it's selfish. I know it might be too much to forgive, but I want you to know I love you. I want us to work, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Her honesty was a double-edged sword, relief mixed with anger and sadness, because while she spoke the truth, the reality of her choices burned deep in me. I thought about the trust we'd built over 2 years, the shared moments, and how quickly it seemed to fracture. I, I need time," I said finally, my throat tight. "I need to process this. It's not just about loving you. It's about believing I can trust you completely again." She reached for my hand cautiously. "I'll wait. I'll do anything to rebuild that trust." That night, I lay awake thinking, replaying every laugh, every private joke, every small gesture. I realized that emotional betrayal left scars just as deep, maybe even deeper, than physical betrayal. The knowledge of what she'd done and how she'd hidden it from me lingered like a shadow, creeping into every thought. And yet, amid the pain, a small part of me still hoped. Still wanted to believe we could survive this, if we both committed to facing the truths we'd ignored for too long. Over the next few days, I couldn't shake the need to understand the full picture. I told myself it wasn't about suspicion, but about protecting what we had left. Every text notification, every small smile, every pause in her conversation became amplified in my mind, that I started noticing tiny patterns. How she sometimes hesitated before answering certain calls, or how she'd laugh at messages I couldn't see. I caught myself replaying moments from the past, connecting dots I wasn't sure existed. The tension was suffocating. Love and doubt wove together in a tight knot that left me restless at night. One evening, she stepped out to meet a friend, and I found myself driving aimlessly, circling the area she mentioned, not out of malice, but because I needed to see, to understand if her promises meant anything. I parked a block away and watched from the shadows. She walked into a cafe, greeted someone warmly, and lingered longer than I expected. My chest tightened, not from betrayal necessarily, but from the realization that she had a life I wasn't fully part of. Returning home, I tried to act normal, but every casual word she spoke felt like a test. Her smiles no longer reached her eyes, or maybe they did, but not for me. My mind raced with scenarios. Is this friendship harmless? Or is it building a wall between us? Every interaction became a minefield, and I feared stepping wrong, saying the wrong thing, or showing too much worry that I kept telling myself I needed patience, that trust could be rebuilt, but the uneasy observation gnawed at me. Love felt like a tightrope walk over a chasm, every step precarious, every misstep potentially catastrophic. And yet, I couldn't stop caring, couldn't stop wanting to believe that our 2 years together still mattered, even if the emotional shadows threatened to undo everything. That it all came to a head one rainy evening. I couldn't hide the tension any longer, and neither could she. I had been keeping tabs in subtle ways, and my unease finally leaked into my words. Are you worried about me? She asked, tilting her head, eyes narrowing slightly as she caught the edge in my tone. That I hesitated, then nodded. I, I just feel like there's a part of your life I don't see. I can't explain it, but I need to know you're being honest with me. Her face hardened for a moment, and I saw a flicker of hurt. You've been watching me, she said, voice tight. That's not trust, it's suspicion. Do you think I'd betray you? I don't know, I admitted, my voice low. I want to trust you, I really do. But I can't ignore the things I've noticed, the moments you've been distant. She took a deep breath, crossing her arms. I never intended to hurt you. I love you, but I have parts of myself I didn't know how to share. And yes, maybe I let someone else in emotionally in a way that wasn't fair. But I'm here now, with you. Do you see that? Her words hit me like a storm. Anger, sadness, and longing collided inside me. I wanted to believe her completely, but the shadow of doubt lingered. I do see you, I said finally. I need reassurance that we're on the same page, that I'm not losing you piece by piece. She stepped closer, placing her hand on mine. We're in this together, but you have to let go of this fear. You can't watch me to make sure I'm loyal. It kills us both. We sat in silence, rain tapping against the windows, both aware of the fragility of what we had left. The confrontation didn't solve everything, but it cracked open the truth between us, forcing both of us to reckon with the hidden walls we'd built. The days that followed were tense, charged with a quiet unease neither of us could ignore. Every shared meal, every laugh, every touch felt heavier, layered with unspoken thoughts and half-hidden fears. I tried to immerse myself in normality, helping with chores, planning small weekend outings, but even these felt like rehearsals. For a conversation we hadn't fully had. One evening, I found myself staring at her phone, not out of malice, but out of desperation. A message preview flashed across the screen, innocent on its face, but my mind twisted it into possibilities I didn't want to consider. I put the phone down, heart racing, realizing that my distrust was consuming me more than her actions ever could. Later that night, we sat on the couch, the room dim, only the muted glow of a streetlight through the blinds. She spoke softly, almost hesitantly. I know you've been struggling with doubt. I see it in your eyes, in the way you hang on every word, every pause. I can't help it, I confessed. I want to trust you fully, I really do. But every small sign, every hesitation, it feels like a piece of me is slipping away. Her hand found mine, fingers intertwined. I'm not perfect. I made mistakes, but I never stopped loving you. That part of me, the part that belongs to us, is still here. Her words were soothing, but the weight of the emotional tipping point lingered. I realized that love alone might not be enough to repair the subtle fractures in our bond. I needed to confront my own insecurities, and she needed to understand how her past emotional entanglements impacted our present. That night, I lay awake thinking about everything. The messages, the laughter she shared with others, the silent walls we both had built. The tipping point had arrived. We could either let it break us completely or face it together, painfully, truthfully, and without shortcuts. The next evening, the tension reached a breaking point. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the air thick with everything unsaid over the past weeks. Rain streaked the windows outside, mirroring the storm inside me. I can't do this anymore, I said, my voice trembling. I can't keep second-guessing everything you do, and I can't keep holding on to every little sign as if it's proof you don't care. She looked down, then back at me, eyes glistening. I understand, she whispered. I've tried to show you that I love you, that I'm committed. But I see now that my past, my actions, the things I didn't stop, they hurt you more than I realized. We sat in silence for a long moment, the gravity of the truth pressing down on both of us. Finally, she spoke again. Maybe we need to step back, not because I don't love you, but because we both need clarity. We need to see if we can rebuild without these shadows haunting us. I nodded, my throat tight. I love you, I said, but I can't ignore the ways we've both hurt each other. We need space to understand if this love can survive with honesty, trust, and no hidden parts. We agreed to separate for a time, not out of anger, but out of necessity. The decision was painful, and the realization that two people who cared so deeply could hurt each other so profoundly weighed heavily on me. As I walked away that night, I felt a strange mixture of sorrow and relief. The love was still there, but the fractures demanded attention. In the quiet moments afterward, I reflected on the lessons learned. Love alone isn't enough. Honesty, openness, and the willingness to confront our pasts are essential. And though it hurt, I also recognize that sometimes taking a step back is the bravest way to protect the potential of what could come next.